Hello and welcome back. We are the Belfer Center Security and Global Health Project. I am here with Professor Juliette Kayyem and Dr. Margaret Bourdeaux, and we're here for questions from quarantine. Our first question today is about the recent announcement from the WHO. They announced that, quote, "There is no evidence yet that people who have had COVID-19 will not get a second infection." Obviously, these are nerve-wracking times for people, so we wanted to put that into context. Dr. Bourdeaux, over to you.
This issue is coming up in the context of immunity passports. So that's the idea that somebody would be able to get tested to see whether they'd had the infection and then see whether they had antibodies against the infection in their blood. And this has raised sort of two concerns. Some are scientific and some are ethical and social. The scientific concerns have to do with the fact that we don't have very accurate tests to see whether, in fact, the antibodies in folks' blood is actually because they've been infected with this particular type of coronavirus. And also concerns that there's false positives, there's false negatives, and it just might not be that accurate. And then the social concerns are about, well, who would get access to be tested? We're already having trouble with diagnostic testing. Imagine if you couldn't go back to work unless you could prove with a test that you were immune. And also, would this encourage people to maybe even get infected so that they would take their chances with the infection and then be able to go back to work, but they would be spreading the outbreak and the infection. So I think those are some of the concerns that we have with this concept at this point. It may be things change. It may be that we get more accurate testing and we have much more equitable means to distribute it, and then we can revisit it.
Great. And Juliette, what's your perspective on that from a governance side?
Well, I thought, just given the scrutiny that the WHO is under, that it was a really sort of careless tweet that set the world on fire, because it implied that we would never get herd immunity, that we would constantly be in a vicious cycle. And while later they corrected it to say, this doesn't mean that you're not immune. It simply means we're not seeing any evidence yet. Leading with the sort of horror story that we all worry about, right? No vaccine and a virus that you could just get again and again and again. Sorry to laugh. Was just from a crisis, a crisis management, disaster management perspective, is like, like sort of crisis communications fail 101. And so I was glad they corrected quickly, but there was about an hour or two when my Twitter feed was, people going, "Oh my God, this is worse than we thought."
Thank you. So we're going to switch to our sanity and sanitation segment. Obviously, this is a very stressful week, particularly with these comments. Other than not having a COVID-19 party to try to get immunity, Margaret, what is your sanity?
It's like a chicken pox party.
Yeah, don't do that. Yeah, and that's a good question. I think that this week has been one where, school was canceled for the rest of the year. And so there's been a lot of adjustment around that. I would say this is when we really have to get serious about community support. Everything up until this point was sort of like, let's, do that extra mile for our neighbor because it's going to be temporary. And now we're into the no, let's really build in extra things into our lives that sustain us for the long haul. So I would say call up your old friend that you've put off reconnecting to, schedule a weekly check-in with them. That's what I did this week. It was really fun. And sort of rebuild some of the social architecture of your life a little bit, I think will help sustain everyone.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Well, that's all the time we have for today. This has been Questions from Quarantine, and feel free to hashtag Questions from Quarantine for your chance to be answered next week. Thank you.